The city zoo was just doing its usual thing that day, a few years back. Sun was out, lots of noise from kids running around, and parents looking like they needed a nap. Over in the gorilla bit, there was this one gorilla, Coco. She wasn't really paying any attention to the crowd, just sitting by herself in a corner, looking a bit down, like something was on her mind. Then, this little boy, Leo, he was maybe 5 or so, came along with his family. He wasn't like the other kids, all loud and excited. He was quiet, real interested in just watching the animals. He wandered off from his folks for a second and stopped at Coco's enclosure. Instead of banging on the glass or shouting like the rest, Leo just put his little hand flat against it, looking at Coco with these soft, gentle eyes. And then, something you wouldn't expect happened. Coco, who had been all still and quiet, her eyes flicked down to Leo's hand on the glass. For just a second, she went completely still herself. It was a small thing, you could have easily missed it, but it felt important. What was it about that little boy's touch that got her attention like that? And why would this tiny moment matter so much years later, in a way that would totally shock everyone years went by, like they always do? Leo grew up, got into being a teenager with school and mates and all that stuff. That day at the zoo became just a fuzzy memory, something from when he was a little kid. Coco, she stayed at the zoo. Every now and then, you might see a little news bit about her, or maybe a short video on the zoo's website. They'd say she was still there, maybe a bit lonely sometimes, especially after she lost her old friend. Nothing too dramatic, just little updates to let people know she was still around. Around the same time, something a bit strange started happening in the area near the zoo. Little things like stuff going missing from gardens or weird things being found in the streets. Nothing big or scary, just odd enough for people to talk about it. Leo probably heard about it, maybe saw a quick news report, but it didn't really click with him. Didn't seem like anything important. But these little things, they were starting to build up, like pieces of a puzzle nobody knew they were trying to solve then. Years later, just by chance, Leo ended up back at the zoo. It was for a school project, or maybe he was just hanging out with some mates, nothing special. He didn't even think about Coco, or that time he touched the glass. But when they got to the gorilla enclosure, something caught his eye. Coco was doing something weird. She wasn't just acting like a normal gorilla. She was moving things around in her space in a way that looked deliberate, like she was trying to organize them in a pattern, or maybe even trying to show something. As Leo watched her, a strange feeling popped into his head, a kind of have I seen this before feeling. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something about the way she looked or a certain movement she made felt familiar, like a forgotten dream. Suddenly, Coco did something that really made everyone stop and stare. She moved towards a specific corner of her enclosure and gestured with her head, like she wanted someone to look there. Or maybe she managed to get the attention of one of the zookeepers and kept looking towards a certain spot. It was so out of the ordinary. It made you wonder what on earth she was trying to do. The zookeepers were totally stumped by Coco's weird behavior. They started looking back at the security cameras, trying to figure out if they'd missed anything that could explain why she was acting so strangely. Leo, he was still watching her, that nagging feeling of remembering something getting stronger. Maybe he even pointed out to the zookeepers that he felt like he'd seen her do something similar before. As they watched the old footage together, or maybe just as Leo kept staring at Coco, it hit him. That little moment years ago, his hand on the glass, her looking back. It was just a flash, but it was there. Then, Leo started putting 2 and 2 together. Coco's odd actions, and those weird little news stories about things going missing around the zoo. He realized that the timing of her strange behavior might just line up with when those incidents started happening. And then, the unbelievable idea popped into his head. What if Coco, all these years later, still remembered that tiny moment of connection, that gentle touch? What if she somehow associated Leo, or at least that feeling of kindness, with something good? And what if she had actually witnessed some of those strange things happening outside her enclosure, or maybe even subtly interacted with something connected to them? Could her unusual behavior be her way of trying to tell someone, trying to point something out? The zookeepers and the police who got involved were pretty skeptical at first. How could a gorilla remember something from so long ago and even understand that it was important enough to try and communicate about local goings-on. It sounded crazy, but Leo, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was onto something. He kept watching Coco, trying to understand her gestures, the way she arranged objects. Then one day it clicked. Coco kept making a certain movement with her head and then tapping on the ground in a specific pattern near a particular rock. Leo suddenly remembered seeing something similar in the old security footage, a shadow passing by her enclosure late at night, near that same rock. He told the zookeepers, pointing out the pattern and his recollection of the shadow. They were still hesitant, but they decided to check it out. They moved the rock, and underneath it, they found a small, seemingly insignificant item. A unique button that had been reported missing from one of the recent petty crime scenes. It was the break they needed. The button eventually led the police to the person responsible for the strange happenings in the neighborhood. Someone who had been lurking near the zoo at night. The evidence was undeniable. Coco's long-held memory and her persistent attempts to communicate had actually helped solve a mystery that had been baffling the local authorities. The unbelievable had become real. In the aftermath, there was a newfound respect for Coco and the complex ways animals can perceive and remember the world around them. Leo went back to see Coco. There was a moment when their eyes met across the enclosure. Coco made a slow, deliberate gesture, a gentle raising of her hand, almost mirroring his touch from all those years ago. Leo just looked at her, a sense of awe and a deep connection washing over him. The world had just witnessed something truly extraordinary, the unbreakable bond of a forgotten touch that led to a shocking revelation.